All right, let's start it. If I look at you this way, because I've got you on the screen under my camera, does it look like I'm like staring down on somebody's chest, or does it look all right if I look look at you like this?
No, that's fine.
That's
all good. All good. Hey guys, Kriben Govender from the Gut Health Gurus podcast. I've got a background in food science. My colleague next to me, James Shadrack, is all things about the mind and psychology with a background in psychology. And today we have a very interesting character, Patrick Vanderburt. Now, Patrick, did I say your name right? Because I butcher the European spellings on a regular basis. So how do we actually say
close enough. Close enough. Vanderburt, something like that. Vanderburt.
I'm familiar with Vanderberg, but you've got the extra bits on the end. So Vanderburt.
Yeah,
Patrick, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I really appreciate your time this morning. It's an early start. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And what I like to typically ask my guests at the start of the podcast, just to set the scene, who is Patrick Vanderburt?
Okay, thank you. Basically, I'm going to try and stick to the point, but my family was faced with a dramatic health crisis years ago. And trying to deal with this forced us to go into complementary and alternative approaches to health. And it didn't take very long to bump into the subject of electronic pollution and radiation exposure, EMFs, these sorts of terminology. And I started investigating and researching this, and this led to a fact-finding mission of me, going to different courses in different countries. I aligned myself with a company called Geovital Academy, which are based in Austria, which are originally a naturopathic health clinic over there. And they'd arrived at this whole electronic pollution subject from a basis of working with patients. And where some of this stuff is sounds a little bit airy-fairy or a little bit far-fetched, with them, everything was logically explained, and it really struck a chord with me. And so I did training with them and then took these skills to Australia. And what was interesting is that when I started offering these assessments over here, I did something that hadn't happened in 35 years in relation to Geovital, is that I made a website in English. And where they'd been concentrating on Germany, Austria, Switzerland only because they were limited by language. And that opened up, inquiries from everywhere. And so fast forward to now, we've got, we're training consultants, or people can learn to be a consultant and learn how to assess their own home, other people's homes. And I've got consultants starting up in the United States, Canada, South Africa is coming. And so it's rapidly expanding because all of a sudden this new player on the field, which has got 35 years of history behind them, and they're used to working with patients rather than, theory. So that's really exciting. So we assess people's homes from a holistic perspective, and we work on logical solutions designed to fit into that holistic approach. So you don't just try and fix it now, but it's you're supposed to make something that is suitable for a longer period of time. And we've found that with our clinic to have an enormous influence on especially chronic health issues that people have. And so we have a lot of people in that field that we help, but we also get a lot more people now that are looking to optimize health or protect health because they don't want to get into this area of these constantly lingering chronic health issues. So yeah, that keeps us very busy.
So I'm fascinated to hear about your backstory, because I think it's often some form of trauma or a health concern or health crisis that drives someone to change or drives someone to look for answers. And for me, it was anxiety and depression, which really sort of sparked that health journey for me. So let's delve into a little bit of detail behind that crisis that you faced.
Yeah, sure. Well, my partner was diagnosed with a brain cancer, and it was on the same side as where the mobile phone was typically used. He was a sales representative executive for a very long time. So always having that phone glued to her head. And it matched up with the brain cancer that presented itself. And anyway, we went down the path of conventional medicine, which in her case backfired terribly. And so there was actually no longer an option that couldn't be pursued anymore. And so we started looking for alternatives. And so we fell in approaches like bioresonance therapy, pulse magnetic field therapy. And it worked very well. The cancer had, before the operation, when they took it out, the cancer had shrunk 0.5 millimeter, which doesn't sound like much, but the difference between growing and shrinking is, of course, enormous. This triggered an interest, like, hey, we could help other people with this. So we started looking at buying some of the instrumentation that you use in these sort of modalities, expensive stuff, $40,000 here, $20,000 there. Some of it medical equipment, some not. And we started buying this equipment with the idea of setting up a clinic. And of course, you got to be careful, especially with cancer. You don't want to tell anybody you're treating that, and neither were we. You're trying to help the body fix itself, really. Yeah. And so we got all this equipment, and I'm one of those people that, in contrast to my partner, when she gets like a DVD player or something, she'll just plug it in, press a button, see what happens, right? Yeah. I'm one of the people that reads the manuals. So we're getting all this fancy equipment, and a lot of money is being sunk into it. And so I'm grabbing the manuals, and so I start reading. And all these manuals on the inside cover, they were all talking about set your equipment up in an area free of electronic pollution and geopathic stress. And it was like this constant little slap in the face, like, will you go and figure this out? And so that led to that whole quest of trying to figure this out. So it follows the whole principle that health is restored and the body aims to repair it whilst we sleep. We have 24 hours in a day, and to some extent we're designed to wear during the day, and at night is when the pathways, everything changes, and that's where we fix ourselves. And as it turns out, is the average bedroom is inundated with this irritation from low-level radiation, which sadly is well below the levels where government says it's perfectly fine for you to be exposed to. Nevertheless, we're exposed to these fields, and it's constantly harassing our body during sleep. And so we can't expect our bodies to work optimally under those circumstances. And so there's lots to fix. And so the whole philosophy is that yes, you can worry about the daytime exposure. And you often get that when you bring up radiation and Wi-Fi and phone tower signals. And well, yeah, but that's everywhere now. Like, you can't avoid it. And that may be quite right. It is everywhere now. It's it gets into our lives, and there's more networks coming out, and 5G is breathing us down the back of the neck. But if we look at the day, you have 24 hours. 8 of those, you're in your bedroom, and you've got a large amount of control of what you're exposed to in that bedroom, and that is the most important 8 hours. So we would argue, fix that bedroom, watch what happens.
Totally agree. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of a back step into that crisis that you guys were facing. So at that point in time, what were you actually doing in terms of your training, your background?
Okay. I've done different things, but the health field was something kind of new to me, or the complementary health field. I've been in different industries, scuba diving and real estate agent, and I'm actually most recent, I'm a pilot. So I'm very much, black and white numbers sort of guy. So, when you talk about, things you can't see, you can't touch, you can't smell, you better come up with a bit of a logical answer. And so, when I was learning about all this stuff, it all makes so much sense. Besides that, there's an enormous amount of research available in this area as well.
So at that point, were you a scuba diver teacher, or were you in real estate?
Traveled the world, tropical places, very nice.
I mean, at that point when you were reading the manuals.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah, I was studying to become a pilot at that stage.
And studying to be a pilot. So really a
Yeah,
bit of a polymath, isn't it? Scuba diver, kind
yeah,
of
all over the place.
all over the place. So that kind of information, that electric pollution led down this path. Now let's define for the audience exactly what is electro smog and electro pollution.
Okay, so electronic pollution is made up basically by man-made radiation. It has to do with energy. So you could split that in two halves. You've got radio frequency radiation. So that's anything that's being transmitted through the air. So that's your phone towers, it's your smart meters, it's the cordless phones, it's the airport navigation equipment, it's Bluetooth, it's the baby monitors, this whole host of things that doesn't require wires. It's being transmitted through the air. So we would call that radio frequency radiation or high frequency radiation. So that's one story. And the other story is low frequency radiation. And so that has to do with wiring and power and electricity. So that comes from the power station where the electricity is made, the transmission lines that are running through the state. It goes to the substations. It is a local distribution lines that are running through your street. It is the cable coming to your house. It is your meter box. It is your solar panels. It's your inverter if you have solar panels. It's the wiring in your house. It's what you plug into the house. All that stuff produces low frequency radiation. And there's a couple of different types I might elaborate on that we'd look at. So with the low frequency radiation, it's predominantly magnetic fields and electric fields. So magnetic fields is something that's caused by current, the flow of electricity. So what that means is that when electricity flows, we get a magnetic field that rotates that source. In case of local distribution lines running up and down the street, those fields can reach quite a long space into a property, especially if it's a corner property, because then you have lines in front of you perhaps and lines on one side of your house, and so you now have two fields, and so it takes much longer to get to lower levels. So that's magnetic fields, and magnetic fields, they penetrate everything, as in they don't really care what you put in its path. You can't really shield against them. You can't really protect against them. So if anybody listening to this interview, if there's one thing you're going to take away from this, is that any property should be assessed for magnetic fields, but especially if you're looking to purchase, as in put your signature down to purchase something or to rent a property and commit to a property for a prolonged period of time, you must not fail to measure this. And we get inquiries from people, and our guys can and our girls can do pre-purchase inspections, so we can check all this stuff before you actually put that signature down, and that's great, but you can do a lot of testing yourself, and we can teach you how to do that. But we get inquiries from people with those sorts of fears. Let's say like, oh, I'm thinking about buying this property. There's these transmission lines that I can see. And it's great that that sparks the inquiry, but it is the local distribution lines running up and down the street. They will surprise you with how potent a magnetic field they can produce, even at lower levels. But of course, they're so much closer than the transmission lines. They can really surprise you with strong fields. Because they're attached to all these electrical systems, which are all these houses. And if something goes wrong in one or multiple houses, that magnetic field is actually, there's dynamics that gets amplified, gets even worse. So you must not fail to measure any new property you're signing up for, to measure that for magnetic fields with a quality Gauss meter to make sure that that's not a problem. And you'd be horrified going house hunting on a Saturday or a Sunday, going to all these open for inspections. You'll be horrified with how many houses, based on what you're reading, you'll be turning your back on and forgetting about. Where, if you didn't have that meter in hand, it would be a contender for you to possibly move into at a later time. And then there might be a problem that even we can't fix. So that's magnetic. That's really important. The other then for low frequency radiation was the electric fields. So electric fields are caused by voltage. So imagine for a second, if you think of your house imagine you're turning everything off in the house, right? You're going around, you're turning all the lights off, you're unplugging the whatever's sticking into your power outlets, all the devices are off, everything's off. But power is available. That means that there's voltage all around you. Inside the walls, we've got cables with voltage. Now, all these cables, unless they're shielded cables, which is rare, but sometimes they're in use, in most houses, there's normal cable, and that will emit an electric field that comes out about 2 meters or 6 feet from the source. And so if you imagine your bedroom wall and you park your mattress against the wall, which good chance that you've got metal springs in it, which is a whole different story that would make these fields worse. They're often magnetic, which is a stressor again. So we are exactly lying in this field. And so this field extends out at the rate, the frequency of the electricity. So that's 50 hertz in most countries, 60 hertz in North America. So you got this electric field coming out 50 or 60 times every second, engulfing your body, all your cells. You've got electrical receptors. Your body's a chemical, as much as an electrical miracle. And you've got this constant harassment going on all night long, 50, 60 times every second of every minute of every hour, whilst you're trying to recoup and recover. And so that's a problem that we often need to fix in homes and in bedrooms. So magnetic fields, electric fields. Then there's such a thing as dirty electricity, where the sine wave, the supply of electricity, is not as smooth and as clean as it should be, which means that some of the wiring can start emitting radiation in the kilohertz into the room. So that's another story. And then we go into the whole radio frequency radiation story. So that's all the transmitters, the phone towers. And so they're all radiating into your space and into your bedroom area. And those levels, when you measure the body, which is something we do rather than measuring the air, we want to see what actually your body's absorbing. Then, you see even when you turn the Wi-Fi off and other things off, there's phone towers all raising these levels and causing additional stress. And so that is something that also needs to be fixed, but that can be shielded again. So that's relatively easy. So that kind of sums up, the kind of different sources of radiation that we will be interested in. But it's the magnetic field that people really gotta take notice of, because that's the one that is often unfixable and should be to some extent avoided at all costs.
It's incredible. I had no idea there was so much radiation that we're being exposed to. Question that comes to mind is, with the magnetic radiation, what are the different ways that affects the body?
There's an awful lot of research available on it. If I can guide listeners to or the audience to a good source of information, there is the Bioinitiative Report. And you can go to bioinitiative.org. You give it your email address. I don't think any sort of spam or anything or news comes back of them. But they send you a download link to this document. Now, this is from 2012. And it's basically the collective work of 29 international authors, amongst which 22 PhDs. And they research the available research. And so it's a 1,600-page document. I do this because I had it printed out, just I want to see what it looks like. And it's easier to read print out than PDFs. PDFs are great for looking up things, but paper is easy to read. And so it's a 1,600-page document of them researching what's available. And as a PDF, it's incredibly valuable because you can go Control F or Command F on your computer, get that little find box come up, and you can type in whatever sort of symptom that you're interested in. So you can go sleeplessness, for example, next, and then it'll tell you, I don't know, page 712, sleeplessness is mentioned, and you can read the context. So it's a great sort of search tool. The effects of on our health can be extremely wide-ranging because there's a lot of systematic systems that are under fire. Oxidative stress is a process that our body gets from sunlight and chemical exposures and those sorts of things. But there's also research that highlights that this happens from, for example, Wi-Fi and radio frequency radiation exposure. And so, that's a whole long story. But that means that it's like a degenerative process that affects the whole body. And so the symptoms can be extremely wide-ranging. When the smart meters got introduced, just to highlight a few things, the most common symptoms that people would present would be headaches and ringing ears. And typically, I would say it would be about 3 weeks after the meter was installed that people started noticing things. Many people wouldn't even know that a smart meter had been installed because they'd be at work and somebody had just, changed the meter over and left. And so then they figure out, oh, hang on, now we've got one of these smart meters. And so that's something that gets raised a lot. But it can be, there's lots of research on fertility issues. So if we can venture into the whole mobile phone, cell phone story, there's multiple studies that show effects on fertility. There's one particular study, and we can organize the links for you to supply to people, where a fertility clinic that had a decent sample of men in this study. It was about 600 people or something. And they just asked them, how much exposure to a cell phone do you have? And they'd tick a box, 0 to 2 hours a day, 2 to 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours a day. And so they tick the box. And the fertility clinic would compare the sperm samples that they had on file, the quality of those compared with how much exposure they had, and it matched perfectly. The more exposure, the worse the samples were on average.
Wow.
There's male fertility issues. There's issues with the female reproductive area or the potential. So, of course, that's really troublesome. There's research, and a lot of scientists are very fearful about what we're doing in relation to DNA damage. Mm-hmm. And that's something that won't even express itself for another 5 generations. And then, of course, it's way too late to say, sorry, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. It's enormous wide-ranging. There's links with the autism spectrum disorders. So, we know that the amount of kids with autism is skyrocketing. I mean, if we go 20 years back or something, and I could be misquoting here quite a little bit, but let's say you might have 1 kid in 30,000 on average. Now I think it's 2 in 40. And those figures are set to double every 4 years. Mm. And if I look in my daughter's school, those figures hold up exactly. There's 2 kids in 2 classes, and year level with 40 kids in it, and there's 2 kids with autism. Wow. And all these things are all kind of out of control and just getting worse. Then there's research on cancers. There's research on cell phone towers, where in a city, one side of the city has significantly more cell phone towers than on the other side, and in that side of town, there's significantly more cancers than there are in that side. Right now in the news is this school in North America where now 4 kids have had cancer in the same school, and there's a blaring phone tower standing on the grounds there. The parents are up in arms. 5G is coming, which is another network of cell phones to connect to, set to use higher frequencies, which means they can move more data. You can watch a high-quality video much more smoothly than you can do on the other networks. But they're implementing this stuff without any studies having been done on the potential health effects of it. So, thousands of people are up in arms begging their governments to say, can you please hold off on the release of this stuff before you've got some data of how it actually affects us. But yeah, even then, they're still in a sort of trial period, so we still don't know what frequencies they're actually going to be using. But the message is that because they use these higher frequencies, there's less penetrating power to get through your walls, so they'll need lots and lots and lots and lots of transmitters throughout the street on light poles, basically trying to get in through your windows. So this soup of our exposure is just getting worse, basically all the time. So it's very pressing, but the amount of health issues is extremely wide-ranging.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for providing that information.
Now, that's really fascinating. And, when I think back, I've got a food background. So my whole paradigm was really, for many years, really focused on food, the supply of food, the processing of food, what goes into food, as being a way to treat particularly my illness, which was anxiety and depression. And I did get some really good results. But in the back of my mind, there was always this nagging question or nagging feeling that there was something more. I felt there was a blind spot that I'm missing out on. And it was really when I started to follow the work of Dr. Jack Kruse, and he's been saying this for a while, and I just very recently came across his work, and there was a big aha moment that this could be the blind spot. You know, you really don't know what you don't know. And I think that blind spot for me, I'm sure there's many, many more, but one of it was definitely this whole electric smog and the pollution and the rise of the use of technologies, 5G, 6G, wherever it's heading. You know, I think this is really a concern. So
yeah, and what might be interesting to bring up at this stage is that there's research indicating that our sympathetic nervous system gets activated when we're exposed to these sorts of radiation types. So, you know, for those who are not familiar with the sympathetic nerve or the nervous system, the nervous system has two states that it can be in. So normally it's in the parasympathetic state, which is your maintenance mode. That's ideally what you're in most of the time. That's where your body maintains itself, repairs itself, and it's great. And you know, when you play football or something, your sympathetic nervous system will get triggered for that time because you need to perform hard and run fast and not get that goal scored, and that's okay. But typically you're in the parasympathetic state. Now your sympathetic state is your fight and flight response, you know, your runaway scenario from an emergency. And so what that does is that it causes vasoconstriction. So your blood pressure goes up, which is all getting you ready for this pending emergency because there's this tiger lurking around your village or something. So your body gets ready for that, but it also slows down or halts the digestion. And so we can do, you know, as you said, like there might be more things at play. And that's one of the things that I feel that, I mean, just open a laptop and start up your Wi-Fi system and look at the available networks. And then depending on where you are, this varies, but you know, people tell you, oh, there's easily 10 signals on that list. And if you're in the city, there might be 40 signals on that list. And that's just Wi-Fi. That's not the Bluetooth that's already in use, right? So that's also another signal being shared. That's not the cell phone tower radiation talking to the handset. The one radiation that nobody thinks about is how one tower talks to the other. Those are those round drums you see hanging on phone towers. They don't show up as strength on your phone. So all this stuff you're exposed to, and what if this soup that we're exposed to, if that's triggering our sympathetic nervous system all the time, that will mean that your digestion is also suffering because of that. So we can worry about, you know, are we getting the nutrients from our food? Are we over farming? And that may all be true. Yeah. But if we're constantly being harassed into our sympathetic nervous system, then this down here isn't working at 100%.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
100%. And that's such an excellent point. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Patrick, because this is the Gut Health Gurus podcast and our focus is on digestive and gut health. But here you go. Patrick has outlined a potential mechanism of how the gut could be getting irritated, because we know that the vagus nerve in the gut connects to the brain and there's crosstalk happening between it. But then you've got this source of irritation through this radiation that could really be exacerbating the problem. And James will be interested as well because, you know, this also impacts the way we feel. This is, you know, triggering a sympathetic state, which is a fight or flight response. So it's all linked, isn't it? Gut, brain, this irritation in terms of this electric radiation. So
yeah, there's another dynamic that fascinates me, and it's melatonin.
Okay.
Melatonin is a hormone that peaks at night. So, you know, when we used to live in caves, it would slowly start to get dark. You know, we might have a fire going or something, but, you know, generally light was dying down. And that was a signal to the body to start the repair processes. And that's when melatonin hormone starts increasing in presence. And it's, you know, a very strong anti-oxidant. It's like your cleanup crew. Nowadays, we're spending a lot of time on our devices, you know, watching television. So we're getting all this blue lights. We've got our phone, our tablet, our laptop. And so often, until the moment where we say, well, really, it's time to go to bed now, that's when we turn off all these artificial lights, which are giving us a spectrum of light which we weren't exposed to when we used to live in caves, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So that dynamic is interesting, and is something we should be very careful about. So there's these glasses you can buy to keep the blue light away, so that helps. But what's interesting is that this man-made radiation that we're exposed to, there's thoughts along the lines that because that radiation wasn't around a million years ago, our bodies don't know how to then interpret that. So that radiation is interpreted as light as well. And so you might be, you might turn the TV screen off and you might turn the light on and go to bed, but you're still exposed to your own Wi-Fi signal, the signal from the neighbors, the phone towers, all that sort of stuff. Your body is still perceiving that it's still got light hitting it. And so that hormone melatonin, that on-swing, is also delayed, or it's just not optimally turning on those repair processes. And that's something I've got a friend of mine, Dr. John Hart from Sydney. Guess you don't mind me mentioning, I've got a podcast channel myself, and I'm going to interview with him. And he's a brain specialist. And he highlighted that story very interestingly. It'd be interesting to listen to.
Absolutely. And that's such an excellent point. And, Dr. Kruse also we interviewed Dr. Kruse. I'm not sure when this podcast will drop, but there is an episode that people can listen to, and he elaborates quite a bit on the impacts of light on the microbiome, and that whole story between, I guess, light and melatonin is substantial. I mean, Dr. Kruse much more can eloquently talk about it than I do, so I recommend people go back and listen to that podcast. But it's all linked: light, EMFs, gut health.
Mm-hmm.
We are a whole organism, and I think in the modern day we kind of separate things into different little fields that different specialists focus on. But I like the approach that you take, Patrick, which is very much of an holistic approach. So let's delve into now, Patrick, what are the potential solutions? And I thought, well, this is especially for someone new like me, it's a very hard field to navigate, because I'm really excited about it and I'm looking for strategies. But I thought, well, it'd be really interesting to do a bit of myth busting, because there's all these devices out there that, I get really excited. I see that it's something you can stick on your mobile phone and you can put under your laptop, and I want to go out and buy it because I want to protect my family. But how about we give some people, some watch outs of some of these potential products that might be not so good, and let's give them some actual strategies.
Yeah, great plan. So let's do that. There may be, if we've got time, and I'm conscious of the time as well. So we can also go into some simple things that people can do in their homes right now.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Turn this interview off and get going, get started, do something, make a change.
Nice.
And then maybe also elaborate on how and where you actually need help with the subject, because you do. You need help with the bedroom because you won't be able to fix that on your own. So maybe if those three things, if we delve into it, it'll be interesting. So all right, so you asked me about myth busting, what works, what doesn't work. First of all, I got to do a disclaimer. Obviously, I don't have personal experience with every single product out there. So whatever I share with you is just a general sort of observation. So you got to take that the way it is and do your own research beyond that. But when it comes to cell phones, for example, everybody has one. So maybe start with that. So there's lots of little gadgets that have wonderful claims. That's all. Put this on your phone, and typically words like harmonized, neutralized, balanced are used. These sort of vague words. We've got to just look at this logically, right? If we have a cell phone which produces radiation and your head's here, then any barrier that's going to reduce radiation would have to be, first of all, covering the whole phone, and it would have to be between your head and the phone. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
So anything you stick on the back of your phone to help you with the radiation that comes out the other side towards your head, to me, doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
Right? So stickers or whatever may be on it, I've never seen one where I can rock up with very fancy equipment and measure the radiation, and I've never seen them making any difference. Now, it could be that some things, kind of support you on an energetic level, meaning it makes you feel better despite your exposure.
Mm-hmm.
That could be, and that's fine, and it's great. But let's then not say you're protected. Don't worry about it anymore. That's not true either. Because you're still exposed to the exact same stuff you were before. It's arguably just as harmful, but it may not exhaust you as readily as it did before. So that's that's supportive, I would say, not protection. So with cell phones, that's something you got to be wary of. So shielding should be between you and the phone. We are nowhere near any phone gadget, but we have a pouch that uses shielded fabric, for example. The fabric sits between you and the phone. The sound can still go through, but the fabric sits in the middle. There's other cases where there's metal in the lid, and so when you close the lid on your phone, the sound can still go through a hole, but you've got a metal plate basically between you and your phone. That would also work. Mm-hmm. The other thing with phones is that that's another good myth. If you have hands-free, right? Plug it in your phone, earbuds in, and so, oh, great, now my phone's further away, right? Well, of course, first of all, you don't want to put it then in your pocket next to your reproductive area, right? I mean, that's kind of, right? If you're going to use something to not keep the phone near you, don't stick it in a pocket. Phones really shouldn't be in any pocket, really. Get in the habit of just carrying it with your wallet or stick it in a handbag, and just don't put it anywhere in a pocket. It's not supposed to be there. Long story. But earbuds, the radiation can very easily run up the electrical cable that's going to little speakers in your ears. But you're really not winning all that much. Wow. If you want to have like a sort of hands-free sort of setup, there's things that are called air tube headsets. Mm-hmm. And so there, the electrical cable goes to a little speaker, a little ball or something that sits on your chest. That's where the sound is made. And then the sound goes up like a stethoscope, like little tubes to your ears. So the radiation stops here and it doesn't go all the way to your head. So that has more merit than earbuds that go all the way to little speakers in your ear. I would say that's pretty much pointless. So that's a good one. You just have to. My experience with these air tube headsets, you got to treat them with respect. As in, they may not last as long as the other headsets do, but that's just the way it is. What else can we say? With phones, whilst we're on it, distance is your friend. So speakerphone is always better than having it on your head, no matter if you've got any worthwhile shielding in place. So get in the habit of putting on a speakerphone if you can get away with if you don't need that privacy, and put it on the table in front of you and talk to it. It said for every 10 centimeters, you lose about 25% of the radiation, and another 25, another 25, and so on. So if it's in front of you on the table, that makes a massive difference than actually holding it in your hand or having it on your head. So that's a good habit to get into. All right, what else? What other myths have we got?
Crystals is one that pops up a lot.
Yeah, crystals. I don't know an awful lot about crystals. I know from my past that there are modalities that can test if particular crystals have a strengthening effect on you. I've got no experience with it myself, but regardless of how many crystals you would put around somebody's bedroom, or the radiation exposure is identical. Crystals don't reduce radiation exposure. Maybe the right ones make you feel better despite of it. If that's the case, then that's nice. But any claims of you're protected, don't worry about it. That's. I would question that.
Sure. So what actually does work? What's your top three? So we've spoken about the mobile distance. Faraday bags is something that I typically put my phone in, and I have measured it. So how about we segue into the actual measuring devices? So people that are listening won't be able to see this, but if you pop onto the YouTube video that will attach to it, you'll be able to see this part of the conversation. So Patrick, you have this device called a tri-field device. And from what I'm reading, it's one of the better kind of entry-level affordable units that are available on the market. So do you want to explain a little bit about this device and what it does?
Yeah, sure. So in the category of what can you do, first of all, maybe before we go to the meters, maybe if we quickly touch on some things that people can do right now.
Yeah, sure.
So if we look at your house, I mean, you want to measure your magnetic field exposure, and that's what these meters are for that you just raised. So we'll touch on that in a second. But looking in your house, there's a couple of things you can do. First of all, there's enough research that shows that cordless technology triggers the sympathetic nervous system, and there's all this host of health effects. And there's an enormous amount of research showing that there's health risks, far more than you might be aware of. So it will be a general recommendation of me and my consultants to anybody to move away from all wireless technology altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So have your router, put switches into place so you can have cables going through your house. Not that difficult. We used to work with wires years ago and it worked fine.
Yeah.
Run cables, have some data cables, ports to plug into in your bedroom, either side of the bed. You can even make an iPad run on a data cable. It doesn't need to be used Wi-Fi. So move away from wireless technology altogether. If for some reason you get withdrawal symptoms when you turn the Wi-Fi off, as in, I can't live without, then maybe you need to ease your way into it, and then at least turn it off at night. Buy yourself one of those clocks that you can put in the power outlet and plug the plug from your router in it. So at least at, 11 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning, this thing automatically cuts the power. I have families that do this on purpose, and they do it earlier. At 10 o'clock, the Wi-Fi goes off, and the whole family, instead of sitting there like that, at 10 o'clock, conversation start. Family life is back, right? And that's just maybe something to adopt. But at least get rid of this Wi-Fi signal at night. If you have a cordless phone, most phones will transmit all the time, non-stop, even when no phone call is happening.
Wow.
So it's better to go back to wired phone, definitely. But if you want to have the convenience of a cordless phone, there are phones that have a feature called eco mode. You can look for it. The Swiss are really big on this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so eco mode phones, even when they're not on the base, if there's no call, they stop transmitting to each other. They just listen. If a call comes in, he will wake the handset up. And if the handset wants to make a call, it'll wake the base up. And so it'll only transmit when a call is actually in process. Where if you have a cordless phone right now, chances are this thing is blaring nonstop. On that note, game computers are well known for looking off, and they're doing all this activity in the background, downloading stuff. You turn your Xbox on, and all of a sudden there's a brand new operating system in there. Well, you didn't click on download, but it got in there, gigabytes worth of information.
Mm-hmm.
So these sorts of things, unplug those things rather than just turning them off.
Mm-hmm.
Other things in the house, in the light bulb family, your fluorescent light bulbs, with the twisty-turny sort of glass.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of the worst light bulbs in the energy saver family. Opinions varies a little bit, but non-dimmable LEDs are said to be your healthiest option out of the energy saver light bulbs, besides the old-fashioned light bulbs that you can't really get anymore. So if this is in the toilet, I really don't care. Nobody spends that much. Well, I don't hope people wouldn't spend that much time. But, right, if it is a reading light that you have on for hours a night while you're reading your book there, I love this chair. I get tired in it so quickly. I sleep so well. No wonder, because you got this light next to you, draining your energy away. So that's something that you can change today, right? Go buy some quality LED light bulbs, not the cheap stuff. These things last insane long, so spend a little bit of money and replace them with some good quality, decent brand light bulbs. So those are things you can do. What else can I quickly tell you? I think quickly that's about it. With solar panels, and I know this is a painful subject because they're so good for our environment, they're not necessarily good for your environment. Solar panels can produce magnetic field, so you have a pumping field underneath them. The inverters can produce quite a magnetic field. The dirty electricity that they can produce as well. So it's not something I would just delve into uneducatedly. Really, there should be in a park. The council should set these things up to serve as a community. I don't think we should all have this stuff on our roof. And I know there's think it's San Francisco or something now, they have legislation in place that new buildings must be using their roof for something photovoltaic. And so this could be the whole smart meter debacle all over again. But if you used it for heating of water, that would be a much better use than electricity. But yeah, delicate subjects, tricky. All right, so then when it comes to measuring, so you showed this meter, the TF2. Now, the TF2 is a Gauss meter, so something that measures magnetic fields, and it is an amateur meter that has multiple functionalities, as in it measures magnetic fields, it can measure electric fields in the air, and it can measure radio frequency radiation in the air. And as an all-round meter, I think that's a qualitative meter. I've done some tests, they're on YouTube, comparing this meter on the magnetic field side of things with measurement with other very expensive, professional level meters, and this meter is keeping up nicely. And so I've got no problem with recommending anybody to take that house hunting and investigating if this house is a good long-term sort of prospect. So with a Gauss meter in hand, you'll be able to measure those magnetic fields of what you're exposed to at home. If the local distribution lines, the ones running up and down the street, if they're on your side of the street, I think you should desperately be measuring that and make sure that that's not a problem in your house. If the wiring in your house is done incorrectly, or a fault has arisen because your house is a little bit older, for example, the connection to the street, that can cause big magnetic fields. And they're in that case often fixable. But again, your meter will alert you to this, where otherwise you never know that this was going on. So magnetic fields is the most important thing to measure, and that's also the strength of that particular meter. There's other meters available as well, but I've been working with that line of meters for a long time, and I really enjoy them. We even have a little course available online for people to learn how to use them. I think you've got the information on that.
Yeah.
So it also has electric field settings, but it measures the air, not the body, which is normally in a professional assessment what we do. So interesting as it is with electric fields, it will show you a lot of things, but just take it from me that even if that meter indicates very low levels, it's probably still enough for us to be really worried and want to improve that bedroom. 95% of bedrooms are inundated with electric fields. So yeah, you can just take that as a bit of a given. And then radio frequency radiation is a setting that shows you, what comes off your computer and the smart meters and that sort of stuff. So you see what's being transmitted through the air. So it's very beneficial to have this meter and do a bit of snooping around. And yeah, it's a good idea to get some help. And so that kind of takes us to the third thing. If you think I've elaborated on the meters,
I think we'll do a quick demonstration with the meter.
Sure. Yeah.
Just to give the audience a bit of a heads up. Like in my household, I have no more Wi-Fi, so everything is through data cabling. So we've put in literally cables and Ethernet ports throughout the house. So I've totally eliminated the Wi-Fi signal. So the one.
What made you do that?
Funny that you ask. So Patrick so graciously came out and did an assessment of my house. So I highly recommend Patrick if people are interested in taking this to the next level, for sure. So let's have a look at. So firstly, Patrick. So on the settings, you recommended when I got this meter to actually put it on the weighted section, isn't it?
No, the other one.
Is the other one. So we put it on the standard response. Okay.
Standard response.
So if we start with the magnetic fields, I'm not sure the audience can hear this. So as we get close to my computer, which is an iMac, you can see, let's see if we can get this up there. You can see it's starting to detect stuff. Now we move this to electric. And you get closer to the laptop, you can start to pick up some feels. And especially when you move close to the power points, you're getting stuff. And how about the radio frequencies? Is that the setting we use, the red setting?
Yep.
So that's
and then the numbers change, and then you see in milliwatts per square meter what the power density is. With those levels, by the way, maybe for magnetic fields, that's interesting to highlight. In most countries, the exposure standard where the government says, oh, you're perfectly fine if you're exposed to anything under this. In most countries, that's 1,000 milligauss. or in Canada, I think it's 833 milligauss or something. Health effects basically start from 1 milligauss up, according to peer-reviewed research. Yeah, I know I'm looking at the clock and it's ticking along, but I'm hoping people find this fascinating. 6 to 12 milligauss is linked to tamoxifen, a popular breast cancer medication, being rendered useless.
Wow.
2 milligauss and up is rendered to melatonin being blocked in its natural anti-cancer action.
Wow.
1.6 milligauss is linked to doubling the chances of sperm abnormalities.
Jeez.
And 1 milligauss, in a study when they looked at kids with leukemia, and they were looking at their mortality rate, which is, of course, a very sad thing to be looking at, as in how many of these kids didn't make it versus the ones that did. They found that if kids were exposed to between 1 and 2 milligauss, their mortality rate was 260% higher than the kids not exposed to just 1 milligauss. And that's why our industry, we say 1 milligauss is the thing that ideally you want to be under. Not saying that between 1 and 2 gives you leukemia. Research shows that at about levels of about 4 milligauss. But when we're looking at our immune system, our ability to keep us going in the right direction versus the wrong direction, we can already, according to this study, see that between 1 and 2 milligauss. So 1 is the one that you ideally want to be under. Let it be a little bit over, maybe not a reason to move house. But ideally, we would say in a house, you'd like 0.3 milligauss. So with the meter you just showed, of course, you're right on top of a computer, so those levels go up. And so, I think I could see 0.7, 0.9 on that reading. But when you're actually taking it through your house, when you're measuring the corners of your bed, you want that level to be as low as possible, ideally under 1, and better yet, under 0.3.
So where we're at now is about, because you recommend actually looking at the peak section, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the peak rather than the actual reading itself. So we can see here at the moment, James and I are about 0.4.
0.4. So it's near perfect. Great.
But when we get very close up to the laptop, sorry, to the computer, it's like 70. So it's that whole inverse square law, isn't it? So Patrick, we're pretty much coming up to time. So we're going to start to wrap now. So
maybe before we do, just because I kind of want to deprive people from this.
Yes, sure.
That bedroom needs help. And so, what you and I have done together, there's lots of things you can do around your house, and you should do those, and you should start tonight or start today. Yeah. But in the bedroom, you need help. And so there's people that do assessments. Typically, you find them as EMF consultants. You can, of course, also find them on our website. And I'm sure you'll have a link. So in an assessment, we would typically look at the daytime areas of your house, your lounge room, your home office, give you some tips on how to structure that a little bit better. But then the attention will very quickly move to the bedroom. And so in the bedroom, we would measure for the magnetic fields with professional level equipment, so we can double check what you've already measured. And hopefully that's not a problem. Otherwise, if it's internal wiring, we'd be investigating which circuits would have the problem. Then we'd be measuring the electric fields that's emitted from the wiring. And typically what that looks like is that one of the people there would be asked to lie in the bed, and then I would normally get their partner to measure their foot for electric field exposure. And often that's quite confronting to see what's actually going on. And then we can't actually do it by ourselves. So the couple would be assisting us with the assessment by measuring the walls in the bedroom while we turn circuit breakers on and off to try and figure out which circuits are responsible for this exposure. Mm-hmm. And the name of the game is, if we know which ones are responsible, if we can get those terminated at night, then those electric fields won't exist anymore, or will have levels that are acceptable. And so this it's not difficult, but you need somebody trained to do that with you. So that's what you need assistance with. And then when it comes to radio frequency radiation, we have an instrument like that one where we can measure how much the body is actually absorbing, because you're a big antenna. And you know this, well, if you're a little bit older like us, you know this, when we had the old tube-style television with the bunny ears on top, right? Sometimes the picture would go a little bit bad, and you'd send somebody over to go adjust the bunny ears, right? And so they'd be adjusting it, and the picture would be really good, and you'll go, yeah, leave it like that, right? And then the moment you let go and walked away, the picture would go rubbish again. You said, no, stay there, keep holding on, right? Your body is a massive antenna, right? So it's, we have more value, see more value, instead of measuring the air, which is what most meters do, to measure the body instead. So in an assessment, somebody will be lying in the bed, and we'll see what that person is absorbing. If those levels are too high, then we'd recommend shielding, which sounds difficult and is not. We have a product designed around the use with patients, so very careful with the ingredients. And this is a paint that you can apply yourself on the inside of the bedroom. You basically create a box, walls and ceiling, sometimes the floor, it depends. Your consultant will discuss that with you. And that basically keeps you out of the wind from all directions. You never shield one wall in a bedroom because it reflects on both sides. So you might shield the smart meter away, but the 52 other ones are bouncing in it back at you as well. So, you win a little bit, but, you're not really making a healthy bedroom overall. So typically you just do the room. It's not difficult. A weekend and you've got your bedroom shielded, and it's something that keeps working for you. You don't have to think about it, and just enjoy it while you sleep. So that's sort of the home assessment process. You can take the bull by the horns and make a change, and especially with kids, I think it's important, and especially with girls, I think it's extremely important, because when we're talking about genetic material, sperm cells take 4 months to mature, to build and be ready for dispatch, let's say. With girls, they're all eggs on board, and we've got no idea what we're doing to ourselves. So personally, I think all girls' bedrooms need to be shielded. That's just me.
That's an excellent point. And that's one of the reasons why I embarked on this journey with Patrick to get my house assessed. It was pretty much as adults, from what I'm reading, I guess nerves are myelinated at a certain point as we mature. But with children, this is unprecedented exposures to EMF radiation. So we don't really know what the fallout is really going to be. So I decided to take that proactive strategy to really do everything that I can to the best of my ability and the means that I have to protect my children and give them the best quality life that I can. And so one thing we didn't talk about, Patrick, was the actual kill switches. So Patrick's team also put in some kill switches. So basically what that does is, if there's no electricity coming through that circuit, it just totally turns it off. So you're creating this really nice, pure as you can, sleeping environment with no electricity running through the walls. So Patrick, we'll start to wrap now. Firstly, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. And there's so many nuggets in there that, people can take away straight away and implement in their houses today. And what I typically like to ask my podcast guests, if there's one thing you could do to improve your gut health or your health, let's say your health in your case, what would it be, Patrick?
Well, besides the nugget or the bit about magnetic fields and letting that sink in, that's very important. The key bit of information is that sleep is where your body fixes itself. So sleep has got to be perfect. To some extent, stop worrying about what you're exposed to during the day. Yes, it's not good, but that's the way it is. It is sleep that matters most. So that bedroom needs to be perfect. So there's lots of information people can get on this. I have a podcast myself. You can find it under Health Stronghold. I share the occasional session like this, but on a specific subject, so you can learn a lot more. There's consultants that you can use to help you with this. You'll have information about these meters that people can get as well. So there's lots of things you can do. If you don't mind me saying, if you have a passion for this area or you're fascinated with it and you could see yourself helping other people, I'm in desperate need for more consultants globally. We're getting more consultants on the ground, but there's countries where we don't have anybody. Anyway, if this strikes a chord, I run courses. You can come and do training with me in Australia and Austria online. Love you to learn more and get involved from a whole different angle.
Of course, and we'll share all those links in the show notes. So if people are interested in Patrick's work, interested in joining Patrick's team to get this message out to Australia and to the rest of the world, you know, we're in desperate need of more education, because I think this information could really move the needle for people's health in a significant way. So Patrick, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Deep gratitude, deep appreciation for you sharing the knowledge and sharing your time this morning. Thank you so much, Patrick.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.